2 pleats, 1 pocket. This is the original trucker denim jacket, Levi's Type 1, now on Den in Denim. It's said to represent blue-collar workers. It was worn by cowboys, real and on celluloid. When I wear this LVC recreation, it's the perfect mix of classic style and some historical features. Let's find out why. Before we go on, make sure you're helping out the channel and being a subscriber. Rarely does a garment symbolize the American workforce like Levi's 1936 Type 1 jacket. The Lot 506 pleated front blouse, now known as the Type 1 jacket, was the unofficial uniform of the American working man as the country struggled through the Great Depression. Introduced as the Rider's jacket, and later known as the Type 1, this was the first jacket Levi Strauss Company produced. XX heavyweight, unshrunk denim. Made from the same narrow loom red selvedge fabric as Levi's hard-working jeans, the Type 1 jacket was designed for both hard work and comfort. There were copper rivets at all the stress points, such as at the corners of a single breast pocket and at the top of the sleeve vents. A cincher at the back for fit adjustment, and a double pleated front made this an easy-to-wear, practical jacket. The Type 1 was the first jacket to feature the famous red tab. Western stars adorned the Type 1 jacket in the 1930s to early 50s. They mostly wore it off-screen at public events and premieres, where there would be photo opportunities. This is denim entering the national stage. However, it is still relegated to a symbol of California and the western states. Celebrities like Gene Autry, Bing Crosby, Gary Cooper, they all wore the Type 1 jacket. We first see the Type 1 on screen in Romance on the Range, 1942, worn by a singing cowboy. And most famously on screen by Robert Mitchum in the film Till the End of Time, 1946.
For $20, you want the story of my life?
This film explores the lives of soldiers returning home from World War II. The film takes place in California. Mitchum's character has a metal plate in his head, and his friend is trying to get him to a VA hospital.
You're asking too many questions, Cliff.
We see a great scene of Mitchum, while wearing the jacket, refuting racism.
You know, we had a friend named Maxie Klein. Maxie was here, he'd probably spit right in your eye. Yeah? Yeah, but Maxie's dead in Guadalcanal. So just for him, I'm gonna spit in your eye.
Then we have the youngest whippersnapper on this list, Mick Jagger. He makes appearances in a Type 1 in the late 60s. The Type 1 jacket had been discontinued in the early 50s when Mick was only 10 years old. He must have either found a vintage jacket that was 15 to 30 years old, or maybe he just free jacked off. There are some differences in the evolution of the jacket, but all of them have 2 pleats, 1 pocket, the double leather patch on the inside below the neckline, steel buttons, but sometimes zinc, but not the sewn-on buttons, and a back cinch. Some will have pocket flaps, a red tab, a T-back, donut hole buttons, blanket lining, various types of cinches. Historically, it was 9-ounce denim until around 1937. Then it became 11.5 ounce. They do make some recreations in 14 ounce. Here are the changes you're going to see. Notice that before 1928, it was referred to as the blouse. It's not yet a type 1. It's not yet a jacket. So at the turn of the 20th century, this was officially called the 506 XX blouse. We see double horse leather patch on the inside neck, double pleats, one pocket on the left side. The pocket is rounded without a flap. There is also a 213 from the budget Lot 2. These ran for 50 years alongside the Lot 500s from 1890 to 1940. And there's also a blanket line 219. In 1915, the pocket becomes angular, a pentagon shape, still flapless. In 1927, we have what's considered to be the first Type 1 jacket. It has a cover flap on the pocket. More importantly, the stitching connecting the arms to the shoulder is closer to the chest instead of between the shoulder and the bicep. In 1933, the 506 follows the same course as the 501s, and the National Recovery Act tag is affixed to the patch. 1936, Red Tab! From 1936 to 1954, the red tab was single-sided, red on the back, without the registered R symbol. It's at this time that the Type 1 is in its most iconic state, but there's still big things in store. 1943 to 1946, we have the World War II models, often known as the S506XX. Pocket flap removed, donut hole buttons introduced, sometimes with laurels, sometimes flat, sometimes with the Levi's. Beautiful fleur-de-lis cinch on the back on some of these, and a lot of T-backs at this time, but only in the extra large and extra large sizes, sometimes known as the S50XXXE, the E for extra large sizes. The seam in the middle is how they made the jacket in bigger sizes. The T-backs will be historically on the Type 1s and Type 2s during the 1940s and 50s. It became a big collector's item in Japan decades later. Aesthetically, the single seam down the middle of the back in the T-shape is more pleasing. About this time, we also start to see the cinch replaced with a slide back cinch. This way you don't need to cut the cinch or poke holes in the denim. Once the war ends, we get to 1947, and all specs go back to pre-war style. Pocket flap brought back, Levi, Strauss & Company stamped on the buttons. And really the only way to tell a 1937 and a 1947 506 is the back cinch. Does it have a slide cinch? It's post-war. If it has a poke cinch, it's pre-war. Then in 1950, we get the blanket lined for the Lot 5. Technically, this should be called the 519XX. However, most of the patches will still say 506XX. Of all the truckers, the Type 1 lasts an incredibly long time, perhaps the most, if you consider 1890 through 1953. It undergoes many changes and evolutions. The Type 3 may have been around for a little longer at this point, but it still has its classic style. We get to see these evolutions in the historic pairs and in the LVC recreated pairs. Here are some of the recreations made by Levi's Vintage Clothing. The oldest I could find is 1910 front pleated blouse. Not much known about this, but it should have double pleats and one uncovered rounded pocket. The oldest Type 1 that you can find recreated is actually the lot 213, 1927. It has a covered pocket, double pleated front, selvedge, oilcloth tag, black coated buttons, cinch back. The arms are still in its evolving stage where the seam is. It's in the middle of the shoulder instead of being closer to the chest where it will be in the 1936 506 XX. This is the iconic one that's easiest to get. Most models out there. It has a red tab, 30 styles, copper, and silver cinch. Comes in a rigid model, many distressed models, probably the easiest to find. LVC did make a few World War II models, the S506XX and S506XXE in T-back. There's also a women's customized Type 1 jacket called Big Sky, heavily distressed, and cut for a woman's body. Then there's the post-war models, which are blanket lined. They do make some that say 519XX, but it looks like a Type 2 outside. That's an error. One I'm wearing is a 506XX stamped. Then, of course, we have the limited edition and the most wild thing out there, the 1936 506XX banner ad jacket, with matching 1937 501s and a matching duffel bag. What about the fit? One word: oversized. Now that really applies to the sleeve lengths. You can cuff them. I'm a medium wearing a medium, so if you want to downsize, you'll see that it'll fit with the sleeves. It'll fit with the belly. But remember, you're going to shrink a little. You can roll the cuffs. It's really the vertical measurement of getting it down to your waist. Because if you downsize, you'll be riding a little low. Now, the most important measurement is getting it to fit your chest. And it's only slightly oversized there, giving you just enough room for a sweater underneath. To match these the most historically with some jeans, the 1927 Lot 213 jacket would go with 1920s 201s. You would get that same oilcloth patch in the back. Could also go with 1922 501s, 1927 501s, 1933 501s. The 1936 506, of course, goes with 33s, 37s, 47s. You could match a limited edition outfit. Then you got a matching bag. You could also go with the S5 series World War II models, S501s with S506s. Blanket lined. I really wish they'd make some blanket lined pants because I could use them in the winter. That concludes the Type 1 denim jacket. Stay tuned for the most classic denim jacket of all time, Levi's Type 2. In the next episode of Den in Denim.